Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Dolby Institute and the Soundworks Collection podcast. We're coming to you with a new season of episodes, and this time we're focusing on great sound editing and sound design and mixing for episodic streaming content, because as a result of the coronavirus, that's pretty much all we're consuming these days. And I'm really thrilled to kick off the season with a conversation with Bonnie Wild from Skywalker Sound to talk about The Mandalorian. Hi, Bonnie.
Hi.
Bonnie is the sound editor and the re-recording mixer for the show. But I also want to give a little shout out to Bonnie and I are recording our conversation today using Dolby On. And Dolby On is a free iOS and Android application designed to make recording and live streaming sound and video with unparalleled audio quality incredibly simple, using nothing but your device. In this case, we're both using our phones. So Dolby On empowers creators to make their statement with amazing sound quality anytime and anywhere. And that's my little shout out for Dolby On. It is available anywhere fine apps are downloaded. So check that out. Bonnie, welcome to our conversation. I'm so eager to talk to you about The Mandalorian.
Hi, Glenn. I'm pretty stoked to talk to you. It's nice to talk to anyone right now. It's pretty good.
I sympathize 150%. Obviously, this is the new show that kind of premiered Disney Plus as a platform.
Yeah.
When the show came out in October last year, super high expectations on the show, and I think it exceeded a lot of people's expectations. And part of that was just the incredibly high production quality on the show. So tell us a little bit about you're the sound editor and the re-recording mixer. So the sound editorial process, what were you focused on? Kind of what sort of pieces were you responsible for, and how did it work out with Matt and Dave?
So the way we approached this first season was that I would be responsible for all 8 episodes in terms of just the sound effects, and so I would be the sound effects editor. So Dave Acord, he made like a large palette of sounds to be used. Obviously, we've got new creatures, we've got new ships, we've got new weapons, we've got like a lot of things to be addressed. And Dave, that would do spotting and consultation with Favreau and Filoni, and built out, a library of sounds to be used. For Star Wars in general, like every Star Wars show we work on, we have a new palette, but then we also have the legacy as well, because everything has to feel, obviously, like it's all that galaxy. Everything has to feel coherent and cohesive. So it's blending the old with the new always. And what's like great at this point about the Star Wars library and the resources we have there is that there's so much material now. It's incredible. So that it's a vast cave of wonders. And then, so for all the 8 episodes, I cut all the sound effects. There was a lot of common sense involved, because obviously there's a lot of CGI happening, but also a lot of practical effects as well. So I approached it as like, what isn't going to change that much? Cut it first. So that was a lot of the practical effects I would kind of go through, doing all the practical, which there was a lot of it. There's obviously all the fighting and everything like that, all the fisticuffs going on. So there was a lot to cut. I mean, just in general, there was a lot.
It's a busy show.
Yeah, it was a busy show. It was like months, it was like really The Mandalorian was like most of my year last year, and then towards the end, as the visual effects came in, it was kind of keeping up with all of that and updating all those things. So my job on it would to be a whole pass, and then I would sit down with Dave Acord and we'd go through it and figure out what to change, or particular things that should be a particular way. I mean, like Matt and Dave have such a vast knowledge of everything that I love sitting down and doing reviews with them, because it's always better. Like, it's always better, So it's a good process, and I've worked with them for like many years now. So I start from a point of where they're going to be, happy, and then improve on it. But obviously, this was a new show, so there's new things to consider. There's new people to consider. There's a new audience to consider. There's a lot of things, and I had to be. You've got to be mindful when you're cutting for TV as well. That the schedule isn't as generous as working on a movie, so it's just being resourceful with everything you have. Kind of, you don't want to overcut it as well. In my mind, like I'm gonna mix this, and I know how much time I have to mix it, and I don't want to be sat there with like tons of stuff that I know I'm not going to use. So it was actually really nice to cut it, because I was going to mix it, and I'm like, okay, I know I'm not going to want that. This is going to be this kind of thing, and you can build it out. Like I can focus on the thing that I'm going to want to focus on when I'm mixing it. Yeah. I mean, there's coverage. I'm still, when you're effects editing, there's still that part of your brain that's like, I might not. It's like everything gets covered.
You don't know. Yeah, and you don't know, like, once you get the music in, how things might play differently. So tell me a little bit about the mix. Were you on a feature film stage, or what was the room where you actually did the mixing?
No, I really didn't want to be on a big stage for this. I mean, for a start, I wanted to mix to spec. I was like, I want to hear this how everyone else is going to hear this, and I want that to be like my native mix. Sometimes, obviously, when we mix for a feature, then we do a home theatre mix like toward the end. But you're not mixing your movie thinking about the home theatre mix. You're going for it. You're mixing it for the environment that you want it to be best heard in. And in this case, it's the same thing. It's like, I'm going to mix for the environment that it's going to be best heard in, which is people's living rooms. So we went on the pod stage. So the I don't know how to describe.
Yeah, I think so for people who don't know, I don't know exactly what the measurements, but it's probably like, I don't know, maybe like 15 feet by 20 feet, something.
Yeah,
the pod room is kind of
it is kind of like a good living room kind of size. It's generous. It's not living in San Francisco living room.
Yeah. It's a nice living room with a really good sound system.
Yeah, it's very nice. And for this show, we were mixing 712. I opted to mix this in 712. So spec wise, it was going to be 714 or 712. And for this, I was like, there's so many new things going on in this. I was like, I'm going to do 712, because then I can still utilize the overheads and have things moving around, but I'm not going to have to deal with that like metadata of having the 4 objects. And that was really because I thought, this is the first season, this might have to, I just wanted to be mindful of what might happen to the schedule. So it's like, well, if this starts to kind of overlap, it might have to be another mixer in another room doing something, or somewhere else. So I was like, if I keep it 712, then I can just be cautious about the ease of everything.
So in this case, were you guys were you mixing natively in Dolby Atmos from the beginning of the project in 712?
Yeah.
So and were you editing in one space and then going into a pod to mix, or were you in a pod the whole time?
So I had my pod the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really key, because then it allows you to sort of obliterate that firewall between editing and mixing, and you can just kind of be working in one headspace the whole time.
Definitely. I'm very easygoing. I don't usually make demands about things, but for this, I was like, can I just be in the pod for like 8 months? Can I take up that space? But it made sense, because the workflow, the other end was going to be like a streaming workflow. So nothing had to change. If production wanted to open up my room at some point to talk to me or to hear anything I was working on, we could do that. We had the ability to do it. And like you say, it's just everything I cut, then you know what it's going to sound like in that environment. And
Right.
even when I was cutting, I'd be like, maybe I'm going to do that and I'll stick it up there. And I'll be like, either maybe that's too much, I'll take it out, put something else in, and that's going to sound good up there. And it's good. It was a luxury, but I did love it.
That's fantastic. Tell me a little bit about 7.1.2 in the Dolby Atmos format. So you're using two overhead kind of channels, if you will. How did you use those channels? What did you put in the overheads? What was up there?
Actually, I used them quite a lot. I mean, for a start, all the different environments we were in. I mean, immediately as we cut in episode 1, the first thing, there's stuff up there. So there's snow going all around. You know, it's great. You can move everything around. So there's snow. You can get so much movement. And then we go inside of the bar there on that ice planet. And again, I've got like, it's kind of like snow on the tin roof, kind of the rain on the tin roof up there. I mean, it's not overuse. It's like it's there for a little bit. It might like come back during the scene, but it's really, I love it. You feel like you're totally in that space, and you can make that space oppressive, or you can really open it up, you know, depending on what you're putting up there. But I used it a lot, even the ship buys and everything. You can add so much money to a shot. You know, because you know the Razor Crest does it. You don't have to see the Razor Crest doing all that. You can hear it instead. And I did like one shot. The Razor Crest just like lands like just like in the distance, right of screen. No, it comes in like all over the top, over your head, and lands. And you know, I know there's not millions of people that are going to listen to it like that, but the people who are will enjoy it. And it folds down easily. You know, there's no hassle with using any of that. So yeah, I liked it. I had fun with it. It was good.
I got lots of questions about creative for you, about about the sounds. And so I love that, you talked earlier about the mixture of legacy sounds from the Star Wars library and the new stuff. And I think for those fans, there are some really fun Easter eggs in the in the sound, for Mandalorian. There were so many things. Like I got nostalgic about the sound of the speeder bikes.
Yeah,
that was so much fun. And then I made a note. I love the mouse droid that shows up in episode 6.
Love the mouse
Exactly. And then there was that wonderful moment in episode 8 when IG-11 takes Mondo's helmet off. And it sounds very much like the same sound effect from The Empire Strikes Back when Darth Vader's helmet goes on.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean,
did you guys have conversations about that? About sneaking some fun library, historical sounds in there?
Sometimes I will have a conversation about it, but sometimes I won't. I'll put it in and wait to see if anybody raises a hand. And it's like, oh. But actually, for some of that, like the crew were like really keen to like kind of like use a lot of the legacy, and sometimes we were like, no, it's got to we got to create something new as well, like to go forward. But there's so much fun to be had. It's just kind of, Dave Filoni is really good at this as well. He'll always say, well, if we put that sound in, we're going to be thinking about another moment if it's like too signature. So
that's interesting. Yeah.
You kind of, you pick where to use your things. And it's usually, the feel good stuff, because if it makes you feel good, it's going to make you feel good. But yeah, there's things that we'll always try and creep in. But what was great about The Mandalorian as well is that we had a lot of like genuine uses for these things. Like we had the carbonite freezing and everything like that. And like, it's like, that was cool. Like on all the Star Wars I've done, like I've never got to do that before. I was like, ooh. I get to use those sounds because there's stuff that you can't, that you can't really use because it's the carbonite chamber. I can't go using that on other things. So it was really good to actually get to use stuff.
It's super identifiable.
The Jawas. Oh, the Jawas.
I want to ask you about the Jawas. We haven't spent this much time with Jawas ever, and I love being up in the sand crawler, up into the cockpit. Like, you must have had great fun with those sequences.
I loved that episode. I loved that episode anyway because it's such a trip. It's so weird, but it's so many cool things happen in it. And then at the end, the Jawas just eat that egg, and you're like, cool. They're just eating the egg. But the Jawas were so good. And what was cool about the Jawas is that I did use a lot of the existing stuff that we had in the library. But also, Matt recorded loop proof for the Jawas. So really? It was really cool, yeah. And Dave Acorn was one of the Jawas. It's just, they're so perfect. It's so perfect. And then with that egg, suka, it was really good. It was really good. It gets nerdy though. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I have a dictionary, Ben Burt wrote the language of Star Wars, and so I'm there like, all glasses go on, and I get a little dictionary out, and it'll be like, the Jawas shouldn't be talking about this, right? It's like, shut up. Like, I'm just saying, people will know. Other people have this dictionary. People will find out.
Was the Jawa word for egg in the dictionary? Because we certainly got that one quite a bit.
It wasn't, but I did check. The closest was like sun, and we thought that's like a big yellow thing. But we went to Pablo for that. We were like, Pablo Hidalgo couldn't like be responsible for the language of the Jawas at that point, and because we really wanted something signature for that, because it's all about that egg,
It really is. It's a major plot point for that episode. That's for sure.
So good.
Tell me a little bit about the sound that you guys created when the child uses the Force. And I'm thinking about that particular episode because it's the first time that the child does that. In the fight with the
Mudhorn.
What am I trying to remember? The Mudhorn. Yes, yeah. Exactly. The fight with the Mudhorn. Tell me a little bit about the sound of the child using the Force and how you developed that and what that sounds like.
Well, that was, again, this was like a big talking point in the final review. I mean, Dave created some Force sounds for the child, and we also used some legacy sounds for that. But it was important in that moment, I think, for the child not to be, for it to be clear that he's not using the dark side of the Force. This is, and this is where, like, Dave Filoni talks about this a lot. It's like, it can't be like this scary kind of big rumble sound. We've got to be careful.
A scary super subwoofer rumble. It's got to be something different.
No, kind of Kylo kind of like rumble scare there. We've got to like air on the side of, we're not really, I mean, it's not subtle. I'm not going to say that it's subtle, but we got to be cautious with it so that we don't think that the baby is using the dark side of the Force at that point, and that he's trying to do something, he's trying to do something good for Mando at that point. So that was if you can't lean back on the Force rumble, how do you communicate that? So how did you hit that target? There's still low end in there. I think originally I cut quite different things in there. I mean, for like when we do Rebels, like Ezra uses he's using the light side of the Force in there, and he has a particular sound. But there as well, that was such a huge music moment that carries so much of it. And there was also the sound of the Mudhorn at that point was also kind of straining, but definitely we kind of went with the music doing a lot of the work there. And then there is still low end rumble in there. It's just not the kind of like the kind of terrifying earthquake kind of thing we've got going in there. So it is still there's still a lot of sub in there that's going on. But
So there's so much new stuff in the show too. I want to talk a little bit about. I just love the sound of the Razor Crest, which is Mando's ship. Not only the engines and the instrumentation, but just like the acoustic treatment inside the ship. So tell me a little bit about that and how you basically created that environment.
Dave, obviously, Dave designed the Razor Crest, and don't fully quote me on this. Dave can obviously speak more to this. But he did. I think he based it on some of the Slave One sounds, Boba Fett's thing. So it's like the new, but also the familiar. You like it's like grounded in Star Wars still. And then the inside of the ship, Dave made like a whole variety. He kind of the rattle, because this era of Star Wars it's kind of junky, that was kind of the aesthetic for a lot of it. Is like, it's kind of junky. We've gone through all the wars and everything. This is kind of, stuff isn't shiny and new. This is like well-used, robust, junky stuff. And so, there's rattles in there. He's got a lot going. Obviously, there's the engine sound, but really in there as well, there's, Mando doesn't say a great deal, so you get a really good chance to kind of just absorb the environment a lot, especially when you're in that ship. And it's nice because like he's, obviously this is like an adventure. So when he's in there, it's the kind of the anticipation of like where the adventure is going to go. And obviously when the child is with him, it's, you don't want to you're kind of figuring out their relationship and kind of what is going to happen. So it's just kind of finding that balance of it not being about the sound of the ship, but it kind of just putting you in his space and in his environment and kind of you want to be in their head, sometimes.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. We were talking about music before. I think one of my favorite sequences in the entire series is that minute in episode 3 when Mando has delivered the child to the Imperials, and there's that great moment when he goes back to the ship and he powers it up, and he thinks. And it doesn't feel right to him. And then he powers down and he goes back out and goes back and gets the child. Yeah. And it's a beautiful sequence. And there's some music in there, but it also was just very quiet and internal. And tell us a little bit about mixing that scene. That must have been a lot of fun for you.
That was because he kind of gets back in the Razor Crest. And I think it's like clear of music at the top. So it's really just the sound of him like, it's gonna go, ding, 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 everything, switches, ding, everything's powering up, and then the music comes in, and then the engines are still going there, but there was a real like natural moment in that music where when I was mixing it, it's like that is the point. You can really just feel a lot of it is just it's like okay, that's where it's going. It's just like lean on the music and take everything else down until the moment where until when he just
makes the decision,
powers down. It's his decision. So it's that point of going from story into emotion and then back to story again to kind of, because that is going to propel him to go back. And we did work that moment a little more when we got to the mix, but really, so that was actually one of those things where you're like, oh, I think that's right. And it was pretty much, I think we tried going sooner. I think what we did is we tried to go sooner, but then we're like, no, it's got to be like, there was a real push in the music of like where it's going to happen, so that was a good thing actually about Ludwig's music was there was always just a strong sense of like, that is when to make that moment happen, which was, it's good with working with a score like that where it feels right. It's like, that feels right. And it's not a huge, it's not a huge job to be like, it's like there.
Yeah. I mean, I just love how detailed the track is, and you know, I think it's easy to talk about the big shootout sequences and you know the E-Web gun is like an amazing, you know, that's an amazing sound.
Oh yeah, the E-Web, yeah.
But I love, you know, I love the sound in the like in the that chamber where the armor is getting smelted, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, we had the kind of, it was almost pulsing down there. It's got like this. It's kind of like an eerie kind of life force because they don't leave that place. That's their life now. It's like driven down into, I guess they're not sewers, but it's the, you know, it's the underbelly of the planet.
Right.
And that was cool with the forge as well, like the sounds of the forge. And again, that was like a lot of that was new stuff that Dave had created, but also some kind of, you know, some legacy stuff. Kind of, you can sneak in certain things in there to give it like that homely feel, Star Wars homely feel.
I also I wanted to ask you about vocal treatments because, you know, as you said, Mondo doesn't say very much, but we get a real sense of his personality. And I wondered, was, you know, because of the mechanics of shooting, you know, Pablo in the helmet, was any of the production tracks usable for that, or was Mondo completely ADR?
No, Pedro went in with Matt and Dave and maybe Favreau as well, and yeah, we shot all of him. So.
Re-recorded everything. Yeah. And it's nice actually. It was. Sure. I mean, especially because I wasn't doing the dialogue editing, it was nice. You know, there was some fill in there happening from, you know, taking the production out and everything because we didn't ADR everyone around him, so. Right.
But actually, when Rich Quinn did most of the dialogue editing, and we had a conversation before he started, and actually, I said to him, just cut it tight, cut all the, you know, I'm not worried about having a fill track all the way through for between 30 and 50 minutes. I'm not, you know, if you cut it up and I'll clean it up, and there'll be a lot of other things going on as well. So, you know, spend your time doing other.
So did the dialogue editors sort of design the sounds of the vocal treatments, or did you do that in the pod?
No, we would do that in the pod.
I'm thinking about both. I mean, I'm thinking about, you know, obviously Mondo, but I'm also thinking about IG-11 and Cool and all of that stuff. Did you basically designed all those vocalization treatments and futzes in the pod?
Yeah, apart from IG-11, that Dave did a few different passes on IG-11, and then we got it signed off. So it would be, you know, that was like before the mix, because that's a big decision to be making at some point. So Dave, you know, did a variation of designs for IG-11 and Favreau, and Filoni signed off on one before we started the mix. And actually, we didn't go back. You know, sometimes those things happen, and you kind of get to the mix, and you're like, everyone's going to have forgotten that we
that they signed off on
this. They said okay on this, but that was, you know, that was fine. I mean, I would tweak it, you know, all those things. Everything's running live, like we you know, we don't burn anything in, so I would tweak it a lot for just like something's got to be a bit more intelligible, you know. It would get tweaked, but no, basically. But Mando, I think I did Mando, but what we really did at that point was really listen to what they'd done in the Avid. It's like, okay, like let's listen to what they've done in the Avid and kind of replicate that. Don't go throwing something new at them at this point, because, you know, they get very used to hearing something one way. And we didn't want to futz him too much. Like, we know he's in a helmet, but we want to get all of his expression and the variation that he has in his voice. So it was nothing crazy. Like, I use like a channel strip, and maybe I had a bit of like drive in there. I think I used maybe like a little radiator or something, but it was nothing like harsh or crude. It was just.
It is remarkable to me, though, how sympathetic and emotional a character Mondo is, given the fact that, you never see his face until a brief moment in episode 8. And he doesn't say a whole lot either, right?
Yeah, it's just sometimes just a mask tilt. I mean, it's like such subtle variation in his movement, But again, there's all those things to consider when you're doing the sound. Is you don't want to crowd that, because things are subtle. You really just want to make sure you're looking at Mando, like paying attention to him, and that your focus is always there. And even like his Foley played a huge part in it too, because often he isn't saying anything. So it was like gauging his, like, we want him to be kind of like, he's kind of, he's badass. He's got to be kind of heavy, and he's got all the armor on and everything. So we went through, Foley did a bunch of different armor sounds for him and stuff like that. And he's got his spurs, all these things going on.
His jangling spurs. Yeah.
So love all that. These things to consider. And it's like, I think we got to like episode 8, and then somebody went, is his spurs like every time he does his foot? Do we have them all the time? And I was like, oh no. I was like, no, we don't. I was like, I just put them in. Yeah. I was like, they're just there like sometimes when it's like just him, like on, like if he's on it, when he's him on it, then they're going to be there. Or, sometimes we just have like the shot of his feet quite often. And it's like, then we get some of it there. But
that's also a way that you communicate to the audience that this is a very quiet place. Right?
Yeah, because if you can
hear Mondo spurs,
all the detail of everything. Yeah, but I was like, not all the time, and not that all the time. That would be very distracting.
So I mentioned that scene in episode 3 when he powers down and then goes back after the child. But what are some of your favorite scenes and sequences from the show that you love working on?
One of them comes very soon after that. So when he goes back and he puts the bomb on and he blows up the wall to get in. So I loved it where and all the lights are flickering and everything in there. That was one of my favorite ones, because I was keen on the sounds I used in there of all the flickering lights. And then I would have it go ding, 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 ding. Like, you could have like the pinking sound. It was like going across the room and stuff. That was cool.
Yeah.
I know.
And we do geek out about this stuff, don't we?
Yeah, but the music in there like really worked, because it kind of went down to this thing, so we could just like concentrate on like what was happening in that space and in that environment and how he's creeping through. And I did love that. I also really loved the ricochet on his armor. I love that sound. Mm-hmm. That was like again there's a story point, like Dave Filoni would be like, that armor works. That armor works. We want to hear it deflecting the bolts. Like that Beskar is a functional. This is like a functioning suit of armor. And so Dave Acord had recorded like these cool bullet ricochets, and so they were all in there, and it really did feel like it was like doing something. He's like, this isn't stormtrooper armor, like he's like it.
Right.
It works. Also, cutting all the speed is always fun. I like cutting speeders, but I really enjoyed those speeders. I really souped those up with some stuff that Dave Acord has made over the years for different things. They were fun.
Well, I think that that all the fans are going to be, I think, relieved to know that they were able to finish production on the second season before the coronavirus shut everything down. So
me too.
So you guys are in post, yeah?
Yeah, I think the schedule is holding. So we're really, really lucky. That is like a huge relief, because pretty much everything else is pushing. No one can be shooting anything. So
I really want to hear about you. In full disclosure, so you're up at Skywalker Sound, which is where the show was done. In full disclosure, I used to run Skywalker Sound. I was the general manager for a good many years in the early 2000s. But you came along after I left. I know David Acord and Matthew Wood really well, who are the sound supervisors on the show and whom you work with. But you came along afterwards, and so I'm really kind of curious to hear, like, what's your story? Where did you come from? How did you did you know from an early age that you wanted to be in post sound, and how did you get to Skywalker?
Yeah, I think to all those questions, I've been there now for, it's like I'm coming up on 8 years, but it was definitely the plan, but it seemed like a very unlikely plan. Obviously, I'm not American. I'm from the UK. So my dad actually was a mixer. So he worked in television in England. He worked for a company called TVS. He did like local programming, TV drama, kid shows, all things like that. So I didn't really think about working in that industry as a kid. It wasn't until I was a teenager and I studied music and I was very interested in music. And I thought maybe music production, but like honestly, I studied all these things. I did music tech and everything, and I'd go to music studios and I was like, no, that's not really what I want to do. And when I graduated college, I did a music degree and graduated. I knew that at that point I was like, I want to work in post. Like that, everything at that point felt like a good fit. It's good for, it's creative, it's technical, it's all these things. And so there was like a branch there. So my dad worked for ITV at that point. It all became ITV. And there was a local ITV station. My dad would give me no information. I was like, do you know anyone there? He was like, no. I was like, do you know anyone who knows anyone? No. And he wouldn't.
He was not encouraging you to go into this business.
I think he just wanted to make sure that if I was going to do it, I did it on my own. Like I did it of my own kind of, I'd get off my butt basically and do it myself. He wasn't going to give me the name of anyone and give me a reference. But I got a job there basically working in the kitchen. I was a runner, just making all the editors tea and stuff like that. I did that for a while.
That's the classic Richard Hemmes story.
Right.
Being making tea in the English sound studio.
Yeah, and I'd go around, make everyone tea. I kind of worked in the picture editorial for a little bit because there was a job there. I was like, okay, I'll do that. So I'll just like ingest the rushes, the dailies, until eventually an assistant job came up in the dubbing department. So I was like, hi. And they took me on as a dubbing assistant at that time. And I worked in those studios for 7 or 7.5 years, somewhere around then. And I was an assistant for most of the time, but you're dealing with the consoles and everything and all the backups and everything, it's like a big technical job. And I would also mix the Foley and stuff, and you're learning all the time. So I would sit in with the editors when I could, the mixers, sometimes we'd switch seats and they'd let me do some mixing and stuff like that, until eventually I would be given the things that none of the other mixers wanted to do. It was like, okay, this thing's coming in. We don't want to do it. This will be a good opportunity for Bonnie. And it was. And it was great. Like, I loved it there. But the studios closed. When HD came in, like, everything got assessed. It was like, well, we had studios there where we shot everything, so they were like, to upgrade the studios is like so much money, close it. And so I went freelance then, and my plan, I was hatching a plan at this point. I was like, if I do this and this and this, like, I could get a visa, I could go work at Skywalker, or not go work at Skywalker, but I could like go to America and do this and do this, and somehow get my way to Skywalker. That was like it was always a thing. And we talk about Skywalker, but I wonder what it's like there. Like, they're making their own stuff, and it was this place where technology was always like embraced and pushed. It was, this mythical land.
Yeah.
I don't really know how I did it, to be honest. But I remember having a conversation.
Did you come into work on Star Wars, or were you at Skywalker before you got on?
No, I was there before that. My part, I basically started again. Like I did get a visa, moved to America. I was in the country 2 years, I think, before I actually started working there. I was still kind of doing freelance bits and stuff like that to keep going, but I actually started working in the digi department, which I wasn't very good, Glenn. I wasn't very good.
But you're right. It's like you got to get your foot in the door.
You got to get your foot in the door. Reimaging systems, not my forte, but I was honest about what I could do. So again, it was like, we don't really want to do this. Let's get Bonnie will install. I'll install all the plugins. I'll do all the licenses. I'll do all the things that like people aren't keen on doing. But everybody knew what I wanted. I wanted to work in the tech department, so I was that was okay. I was just like, I'll be helpful. I'll be as helpful as I can be. And then worked in the tech department. I was a mixed tech on the stages there.
Sure. Yeah.
And after, again, I think, I was at Skywalker 2 or 3 years, I think, before Matt and Dave really stuck their neck out and took a chance on me because they, I hadn't done any editorial or mixing work at Skywalker up until that point. So
what was the first show?
It was Rebels. I worked on Star Wars Rebels. So Matt and Dave came to me and they were like, hey, can you cut effects? And I'm like, yes. Kind of thinking, maybe I've forgotten how to do that. It's been a couple of years. I was like, yes. And they're like, you worked on TV, right? I was like, I did. And so, yeah, they gave me a shot on the second season of Star Wars Rebels. And it was great. I was like, yeah. And that was my first time also working with Dave Filoni. So that was the beginning of my like Star Wars trip, which has been pretty great.
That's a great story. Well, Bonnie, thanks so much for taking the time today to come on and talk with us about The Mandalorian. It's been great to hear your experiences and sort of kind of how the work came together on this really special show.
Well, I was really busy, Glenn, so I don't know what to tell you.
Well, go back to your very busy
really
schedule,
busy.
Right? Yeah. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We've been talking today with Bonnie Wild from Skywalker Sound about the amazing work that was done on season 1 of The Mandalorian, and looking forward to season 2. Thanks for joining us. We both, Bonnie and I both captured the conversation today using the Dolby On app. So go to the App Store and check that out. Bonnie, thanks again. It was fun talking to you.
Thank you.
This is Glenn Kaiser signing off from the Dolby Institute and the Soundworks Collection podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in.